morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Tonight, we would like to carry on the discussion regarding this ANC and DA. Some call it a GNU, others call it a coalition. It seems to have raised a lot of dust in many quarters. And some people feel very strongly that it was a mistake. And some to the extent of even saying that the ANC is sold out. Gentlemen, what are your views on this issue? Can we start with you, Ben?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the question. My position on the coalition, in terms, basically, there's a political view, and then there's the economic view. And I think, from an economic standpoint, I think it's something that is beneficial to South Africa, and not just South Africa, but the region as a whole. Why am I saying this? You know, we know what South Africa, I believe South Africa was on a downturn, economic wise. And bringing in the DA, which is something that is, slightly opposite from what the principles of ANC are, it brings in, dynamism into this whole equation, to say, there's control now, there's questions to be asked, and there's questions to be answered. Right. You can no longer free will or willy-nilly just make policies and just do what you want. You're answerable. So from that point, I believe now you will get meaningful policies that are debated first before being passed. And I think it's a good, starting point economically. Politically, yes, it's going to be difficult because they're so far apart. That's for sure. But I think in terms of growth for South Africa, in terms of stability for Southern Africa, I think, it's a plus. It's a win-win.
Hello, sir. What are your views there, Divine?
That was are we looking at have they decided that he will be the vice president, or is the other?
The concept of the ANC DA coming together to form this coalition. Do you think it's a good idea, or do you think it's a bad idea?
Well, the idea is that the DA made some gains in the election. They got 20% plus, and they are the second winning party, and ANC did not attain the majority, 50 plus 1, I guess. They could have aligned with all the sister party relatives like ANC, EFF, and MK. Those are members of ANC that are dissatisfied. So their ideology is obviously based on the concept of the original freedom views. Now, if ANC and EFF is so adamant they do not need to join hands with the DA, that makes them way too far from the spectrum of understanding global economics. And the DA is full of white people who have vast connections of money and have so much potential to hurt and damage South African economy. But they could also do very well in building the South African economy if they are given measurable results, and they are also able to define what they are going to accomplish for South Africa. And remember, they are settlers. They are settlers that brought children to Africa, and they ended up having children, and they are going to remain settlers. They are visitors. They are African now with citizenship, with our new roles and the new rules as we go forward as a nation, as a world that is open to globalization. But Africans must continue to tread carefully. And I think that it is a good move, but with a nuance in my part. I have to observe them and give them parameters that they work on. They can't just have free reign. Now, if ANC is able to control that situation, more power, but it's going to be hard because some of them are going to be paid to make bad decisions or to look aside, especially the issue of land appropriation, which must be addressed. And Black South Africans must be given land with title deeds, and they should not pay for anything, especially those who were born before the independence. During that time, those people who had some head rights, or at least where we can allocate that land for them. So I do believe that that's a good move if they know what to do with it. But it is also possibly the most dangerous move, where you can end up seeing the DA leading South Africa and being, having a DA president at some point, where they could do so well that they could buy some of these poor Africans to vote for them into power. And that is not democracy anyway, even if it happens that way. So, yeah, so I have two feelings about the issue. Thank you. Back to you.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for that. I would like you to listen to this this video rather, of this gentleman who had a totally different take on this. Then we can discuss it.
So look, South Africa, as I warned about several weeks ago, before the election, it has been now undermined by means of what can only be called a soft coup, an electoral sabotage. But I don't only mean by means of rigged elections, but by comprehensive subversion, manipulation, and infiltration of their domestic political landscape by the United States. The so-called Democratic Alliance, the DA, which has been supported by outsiders, by the West, by the National Endowment for Democracy, and so on, by Western private sector power, collaborating with private sector power in South Africa, has now been able to move its way into a ruling coalition with the ANC. Okay, the DA is anti-BRICS. It's pro-Zionist. They represent the colonizer class and colonizer interests. I think that what happened in South Africa is tremendously important and tremendously dangerous for the entire BRICS project, because it reveals the very clear intent, in my opinion, of the owners and controllers of global financialized capital to revive and to restore colonial control by any and every means available to them, and to subvert the economic sovereignty and political independence of the global South, if they can. Like I said, if they can find ways to do it, that's what they'll do. There's a new Cold War happening. It's a Cold War that's happening right now. And I think that we're seeing espionage and covert operations and political intrigues, the likes of which we haven't seen since the 1950s, 1960s. At this point, I don't feel confident, to be honest, about any so-called democratic elections in any countries in the global South, except that they will be tampered with. And in fact, not only in the global South, in places like Eastern Europe, in the Balkans, and so forth. Same thing. South America, obviously, this is also happening. This is especially going to be the case in any country that operates according to a parliamentary system, because they're very easy to manipulate and tamper with. I think that BRICS should draft a uniform policy that requires all member states, or at least encourages all member states, to ban the National Endowment for Democracy from funding any political party or any NGO in their countries. And you can add to that USAID as well, USAID. But I don't think it's wise or safe for any BRICS nation to allow domestic organizations or domestic political parties to be funded by the United States in any way whatsoever. They're only going to be used to manufacture opposition or to manipulate real existing opposition towards their own ends, against the interests of that country. So that needs to be stopped, in my opinion. There are moves and counter-moves going on non-stop. The situation is fluid. While there's no doubt in my mind that the Global South will rise, it's not at all clear who is going to be in control of the Global South when all is said and done. The Global South will rise, but who's going to be managing that, we don't know yet. The economy is shifting, there's no question. But those who have been controlling the global economy up until now want to maintain their control during and after the transition takes place, during and after the pivot. And how that's all going to turn out is up in the air right now. And it's being determined, that outcome is being determined by decisions that are being made now. The most dangerous situation is in Africa, because of course Africa is absolutely the most important continent on the planet. The most important continent to the planet. And the next most important, and therefore the next most at-risk region, is the Middle East. The Middle East and Africa power the whole global economy. They power everything that makes so-called modern life possible. It's all made possible by the Middle East and Africa. And if the West was an actually civilized civilization, that would mean that peace and stability in the Middle East and in Africa should be of paramount importance. Good relations and harmonious dealings and so on, that would be the priority if they were civilized people. But of course the West is not civilized. And if you have something that they need, if you have something that they want, but especially if you have something that they need, then they do not see you as a friend. They don't see you as a friend that they want to be close to and have good relations with. They see you as an enemy that they want to subjugate. They see the world in a predator-prey paradigm, kill or be killed mentality. They're the original extremists, and they've never grown out of it.
Interesting take, to say the very least. My view is, yes, of course, the West will want to exploit Africa. This is the first time it has happened. We all remember the scramble for Africa when the European countries sat down and carved up Africa among themselves. But are we really in danger of being recolonized by the West? Or are we being naive here? Because in my view, we are just as vulnerable to being colonized and exploited by the East. And in fact, in this particular case, we've got to add the new kid on the block, the Middle East. Countries like Dubai. There's no doubt that some of the looting of our wealth has ended up in Dubai. I don't know what what you take from this video, gentlemen.
Well, I guess I can make a quick comment. It didn't offer solutions on what he suggests should be next. And I've met these people. I've met President Biden. I've met President Obama. I met Kamala Harris. I met these people, and what he's describing is not true. I've seen their eyes. I've seen their souls. They want freedom for the entire world. They want to emancipate the potential exploitation of the world by China. Yes, United States has made its errors in the past. They have committed atrocities, including slavery, but they're the ones who also participated in ending those ideological principles that oppress people. They're the ones who started to recognize the Constitution, that it must apply to the whole world. That's why they have been consistently fighting demagoguery and oppressive regimes throughout the world. They have maintained the principles of just and fairness, rule of law, equal rights, democracy. It's been always the wish and the solution for the United States so that countries can be productive. Yes, Africa is producing the resources that are going to power the world, and they are powering the world. The Middle East has given us its oil. America has the most amount of oil in the world. So don't get it twisted and think that America needs anything anywhere. America, when we talk about energy, America owns the most amount of oil, not Saudi Arabia. That is why they didn't care to extend the petrodollar to facilitate that any country that buys petrol must use the American dollar. America didn't push to sign for that because they no longer need that deal, because they want to be fair. They want Saudi Arabia to decide its own. If Saudi Arabia wants to re-sign a deal with the United States to procure oil and allow the world to buy oil in United States dollar, more to it. But you must remember that that move by the United States in the 70s allowed the network effect of the American dollar to become a commodity, that it is no longer a currency. It is equal to potatoes, food. It is necessary. You have to have the American dollar because it's now the world global reserve currency. It is no longer a currency. It is now a commodity. The American dollar is skyrocketing. Even now, it is the strongest it has ever been. There's no unemployment in America. Yes, America has been also able to transfer its inflation to other countries because everybody wants to use the American dollar. Zimbabwe doesn't have to use the American dollar. They can stop. And that means they will not get American inflation. Nobody said they should. Nobody has to use the American dollar. China doesn't have to use the American dollar in order to buy oil. Nobody has. If anyone wants to do the BRICS and join the BRICS, they are welcome to join the BRICS. America has never been against the BRICS. They don't care. It's ineffective. They only have $100 billion that they have. America is talking about 1.4 quadrillion United States dollars that are floating everywhere. BRICS, it will take 100 years for BRICS to even have any potential that's meaningful. People are not doing the analysis. There's this hate for America that people don't understand. I've been in America for 30 years. So I am telling you, I've met these politicians. I've talked to them, and I've interacted, I've seen them, I've shook hands with them, I've taken pictures with them. And I've understood the American philosophy. No one wants to oppress anyone. None of the Black Americans here, none of the people who came here from all over the world as a melting pot would support the idea of wanting to oppress another country anyway. What we fear is China's incursion in the Indo-Pacific region, China's incursion in the frontline states like South Africa now, China's incursion in Zimbabwe. If you look at Zimbabwe, it's torn apart into pieces. Zambia, we used to laugh at them in the 80s, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, when they were being torn apart by China, when they were mining copper. And they had terrible work relations. China has been unable to take care of its own people, oppress its own people. So Russia, a demagogue, a country that has no rights. So are they asking us to say they no longer want parliamentary democracy? That democracy that was invented by the Romans long ago is the perfect choice for people to choose a leadership. It's no longer necessary. Parliamentary democracy can be manipulated. That's part of how it works. But in the overall realm of scheme of things, people will make their own individual choice when they go to that booth. It is that choice of the people. Now, if there is rigging, that, like as in the case of Zimbabwe, that's when we look for perfect, pure leadership that is genuinely enough going to fight ZANU-PF using the right methods, looking for reforms before elections. Those are parameters that one must engage in. So when you say the DA is sponsored by America, I would doubt that America would rather work with the DA than to work with Russian counterparts. I like EFF. I like what they have done with empowering Africa. I like what they are doing to push the agenda around Africa to make sure that Africa becomes united. I have also some reservations on EFF, love for Russia. It bugs me, and it makes me almost realize that, yes, the leader of EFF, they're still young. They just have been poisoned by the Russian propaganda machinery that has been doing a very good job to train Africans to talk negatively against America. I mean, you see people like Rutendo talk negatively against America, but they want to come here and go to school. They want to come here and give speeches. They are not going to China. They're not going to Russia. They're not even going to be accepted there. But they all talk about how America want to colonize Africa, yet they are coming every day to Harvard, sending their keys to this and that. It's almost that these people are paid, or they have no brains to think on their own, or they are looking for attention based on what is popular. But the reality of the fact is that America.
Can I interrupt you there? I think what I wanted to do is to focus on the West.
Right.
The West does and has a history of exploiting Africa, and I think that cannot be completely overruled.
Which West are we? He talked about America, and America has not exploited, has never colonized anyone. I remember, America has not exploited anyone in a way that has not been sitting across the table in a business relationship where everybody agrees to the terms they like. Yes, they were a little bit.
America may not have been involved in the scramble for Africa, but we cannot deny that America has sided with countries like Britain and all the other colonial powers in maintaining the colonies, and in some cases, particularly in the UN, have sided with powers that are clearly Western, with Western interests, out of solidarity with the Western countries. I think that point cannot be denied. But what I was really interested in here is, can we also say that the East has not done the same? Because one of the things that I have noticed personally is that while Russia and China particularly helped African countries fight for their independence, you could not deny that their intention was not just so that those countries can determine their own destiny. They had their own agenda. The price that they extracted from some of these independent African countries was that those countries were to become, in all but name, colonies of China or Russia. I think that is a point that the gentleman in that video failed to emphasize.
In my opinion, what this gentleman is saying, I want to hit the nail on the head. I think he's talking absolutely nonsense. Why am I saying he's talking nonsense? I mean, look, the situation in South Africa, we know South African economy was going down. And the people were not happy with it. And the people spoke, and the people showed it with the results that we got. That was democracy. Democracy is the ability for you to speak against. And the only way you can speak is through the ballot box. And they did. So where he's saying that it is sponsored and has been, you're trying to fight democracy, right? I would give an example to say, why does America sponsor, let's say DA or Triple C back in Zimbabwe? Let's give an example. If ZANU-PF was to go against Triple C, and Triple C had no sponsorship whatsoever, and ZANU-PF, all they just have to do is go to the Reserve Bank with the key, open it up, and invest in themselves. It's a one-way traffic, right? So by getting sponsorship, it's trying to level the playing field. Look, I mean, let's look at these dictators. You don't have media, right? The whole playing field is just not equal. Let me just put it this way. So by getting investment you are trying to try and get leverage, some sort of equilibrium. So he can't go and say, America is the one that is sponsoring this to get their agenda. China is also sponsoring ZANU-PF back home, because China has got its own agenda going on there. They've got minds that they have to protect. So it's very difficult to start pointing to say it is because of the Americans, it is because of this. And as far as BRICS is concerned, what I feel about BRICS is, I think backing currency by gold is a good thing, because something that is tangible, something. But I don't like the formation of BRICS. A lot of the countries that are inside BRICS are very corrupt. And they may say that we have 20 tons of gold, and they don't have, just like what Zimbabwe is doing. And nobody can prove them wrong. If there was somehow where we could say they are audited, and then that, I would believe it would work. But as it stands, I think it's just the formation of people that just want to manipulate the other. And they don't even trust each other there and there. So what this gentleman is trying to say is, we should do away with democracy. We should do away with, fair playing field, just because he's got an agenda against the West, particularly America. America we can deny it. America is powerful, and they got where they are because they trust in their system. The people of America trust their own system. And this system is trusted around the world. Period. Who trusts the Russian system? Can you trust the Russian system? We know how it is going, right? One president for the decades of years, you go against, you are killed. So I think, let's just call it a spade a spade. I think this guy is talking nonsense. And if he wants to prove it, let him go to South Africa and go and speak to the people of South Africa. Stay there for at least 2-3 years. Then you come back and you say exactly the same thing. I think it's just because he has never been there. Let him go to Zimbabwe. Stay in Zimbabwe. See how the people of Zimbabwe are living. And then you come and tell me, no, get rid of NGOs. Then we are talking the same language.
What do you think?
I agree with. I brought my microphone closer. I agree with him. I agree with you. And I truly think that America means well. I know, because the aspirations of American people, the things that I seek here in America are my freedoms, my ability to keep my guns in my house, my ability to defend my property. Even if the president walks here without permission and do something silly, I can take him out. So those are the ability to have to enterprise, and the ability to hold our leaders accountable, so that we have a voice. Those things are what America continues even now, and people are getting those things. They're fighting for those, and they are pushing those methods, those ideological principles around the world, and that is why they sponsor organizations like CCC, and that is why they've obviously aligned with. They can't align with EFF if he's busy trying to invite Putin into the country and march and defend Putin with a gun and fight for Putin. It's almost like he lost it there. And I like Malema, but I think he made a wrong move by that. I hope he can turn around. And I think that is why they couldn't be in a coalition, because they are supporting the BRICS. As far as I'm concerned, the BRICS will not serve Africa well. It will only bring more inflation to those countries, because now you are importing inflation from Russia and China, because they're the ones who are buying the most gold. I mean, China has been buying record high gold in the past since 2021. They buy more gold than the United States. Russia has been buying gold. But if you look at Zimbabwe, South Africa, all these other countries, they have been selling gold. So while we can join the BRICS, we don't have our allocation there. So that means we are going to be importing the inflation from the BRICS the same way we've been importing inflation from the United States to Zimbabwe because we're using their money, right? So that's why we say we're creating our own dollar, our own money in Zimbabwe. That's part of liberating the country from United States. Otherwise, why is Zimbabwe using American dollar and we talk bad about them, right? Why not use the Russian ruby? Why not use the Chinese? You see, so there is this inability to extrapolate logical sense from many Zimbabweans, and guys like him. Those are paid by the Russians. They'll be paid by the Chinese. Yes, they're sellers. They're looking after themselves. Why not? And they love the attention they get when they are talking about things like that. It is being shared by black people that white people now are really telling us the truth. No, I think it's baloney. Back to you.
Well, my take on this one is I think Africa has always been vulnerable to outsiders. During colonial days, in the scramble for Africa, the Europeans came in and divided Africa among themselves as if we're not even there. And then we had to go through an armed struggle to end colonial rule, only to let in the Chinese and Russians through the back door. I think many Zimbabweans by now will know that China has played probably a more destructive role in Zimbabwe than the British ever did. Because the Chinese are in there to exploit and to loot. The level of looting that has been taking place since independence is unbelievable. Yesterday I was playing a video by Professor Jonathan Moyo where he was admitting that 12 to 15 billion US dollars in diamond revenue alone was looted between 2007 to 2014. You say to yourself, this is diamond alone. If we go to gold, other minerals, other resources, it's unbelievable. And for a small country with a GDP of, 20 billion, this is an incredible amount of money. And if we are to dig deeper, we'll find that Chinese have had a big role in that. So I think the disappointment for me is that we drove out the Western colonial powers only to let in the Chinese. And this gentleman's analysis is only focusing on the West. Yes, of course, the West could play an influential role in elections in South Africa as much as in Zimbabwe. And some of these so-called opposition parties that they've been supporting, personally, I think some of them, they've not done us any favors at all. The blind support by some of the NGOs from the West of parties like MDC, I don't think has helped to promote democracy in Zimbabwe. I have criticized the fact that MDC has failed to implement reforms during the GNU. Why is it some of these Western donors have still maintained and propped up parties like that when they can see this party is corrupt and incompetent? And yet they have. That has not helped us. That has only helped to undermine our democratic process. Because ZANU-PF has benefited from the very fact that we have got a corrupt and incompetent opposition. And I don't know about DA in South Africa, but if they have been actively involved in promoting the DA to the point of undermining the democratic processes there, again, that is to be um, frowned upon. But I think the other thing that I want us to focus on is here. Why is it that in Africa we make ourselves, we've reduced ourselves to pawns in this game of life? We seem to be totally helpless, always vulnerable to other people.
My opinion is we have two continents that he has talked about, Africa and the Middle East. And when it comes to Africa, I believe the biggest problem that we have in Africa is corruption. I will give you an example of Unki mine in near Shurubi. It was being mined by, it's still being mined by the British American company, right? And for 10 years, they were taking samples. They were mining and taking samples for 10 years, mining platinum, just taking samples. Nothing was being paid. Nothing was, coming in terms of finance to Zimbabwe, which is a lie. Somebody was getting money and somebody was keeping it for themselves. We go to the Chinese, right? The Chinese, no matter what, they would never build, a processing plant in Zimbabwe. They would rather carry iron in its ore form, just hard smelt it and take it to China. Why do they not want to make these, into proper whatever iron and then export it? This is the reason why I'm saying this is whether we have the West investing or whether we have the East investing in Africa, the corruption is so much, and both the East and the West have realized that corruption is there in African countries, and all you just need is just to give whoever needs to be given little change, and then that's it. Period. Then when it comes to the Middle East, I think it's their failure to sit on a table and talk about their issues. Instead of buying infrastructure to develop their countries, these guys have invested so much in guns. So you cannot blame to say it's the Americans that have done this. Their wars have been there since, if we go into biblical times, they have been always been fighting. So, if that is the way they want to continue, then that is their business. If Africa wants to be corrupt, anybody will take advantage of this situation. There's money to be had. If guns are what is being sold in the Middle East, I would make guns. If I'm a businessman, I would make guns and sell them the guns. If, I want to mine in Africa, particularly in Zimbabwe, and there's somebody that I just need to pay, I would pay him and mine for free. This is exactly what is happening. So we cannot then say it is because of this. I feel whoever invests in Africa, they know that Africa is corrupt. Just pay this guy and the deal is done. In terms of the Middle East, if they want their guns, let's give them their guns, and whatever we get from there is what we get. It's business. Everybody's going to take advantage of everybody at some point, because every country wants to be great for its own people.
And talk about the diamonds. I know the people who were involved in it. This lady, who is a CIO, was an air hostess coming from Kuala Lumpur, ran into Rajiv, the Gandhi family, the former ruling family of India, brought that man to Zimbabwe, introduced him to Peres Shiri, where she was residing with Peres Shiri because her sister was married to Peres, and introduced that man to Mr. Victoria Falls. What's his name? Is it Mr. Moyo, that gentleman, Mpofu? And then General came around, they gave her 80,000 and sent her packing. And they put that man into the Miku's hotel, where he received the diamonds and sold them wherever he saw fit. There are a lot, so I'm sure they will flood the market of India. So I think he had other markets. He was a diamond specialist on top of that. He brought equipment and took himself the entire floor or something like that at the Miku's hotel that time. So that is corruption. That has nothing to do with America. That whole $15 billion, America was not part of that. But it's the Zimbabwean government and other allies, as you stated, Dubai, a lot of our wealth is there. Dubai just want to get money. They don't give out anyone money. So when ED went there looking for money, they told him, no, you put the money here. So I have information that even some ZANU-PF officials in Dubai, they have bought a whole strip of land in Dubai where hotels have been produced. The money they were stealing in Zimbabwe, they bought Dubai. So ZANU-PF officials own part of Dubai land where those hotels are sitting on. There are people with so much money. Marino to Seme Sam Zimbabwe, they are billionaires in Zimbabwe right now. I think there are probably more than 10 billionaires in Zimbabwe. Some of them that we don't even know. That's the issue.
My point, gentlemen, is I totally agree with you. The problem is ourselves. But what I wanted you to address there is, why is it that we Africans have failed to govern ourselves? Yes, of course, the West is taking advantage of that, of us. The East is taking advantage of us. And the new kid on the block, the Middle East, particularly Dubai, is taking advantage of us. Why is it that we have been so helpless that others from outside come in and do whatever they want? That is what I want to talk about.
I believe it comes down to selfishness. We're just selfish. We think about me. I'll give you an example. We always talk about this $15 billion worth of diamonds. I do not even think, they got $15. People say 15 billion worth of diamonds disappeared. But the amount that was realized, you would probably look in the region of maybe a couple of millions, hundreds of millions. Because if you're getting, bribes. I want to look at in terms of the gold mafia. On paper, you're coming in with, let's say, 10 million after selling your gold. 10 million on paper. But the actual money that is being carried is 100,000. That 100,000 is not going to the bank. It's going to go and pay the bribe to somebody that facilitated the deals. This is exactly what is happening in Africa. In terms of us realizing the full potential or the full value of our minerals, we want to get for ourselves, for an individual. So if you pay me 10 million for gold that was worth 100 million, it's a lot for an individual. Right. But if you're looking at in terms of Zimbabwe, 100 million, and what we need to do is not even enough. So it comes down to sheer selfishness. We've got the deals that are happening, the Chivayo deals. These are individuals that are doing this. And they are the individuals that are gaining. So as long as I am gaining, that is the mentality that is in Africa. As long as I'm gaining, and my close friends are also eating and family, the rest is okay. So it's corruption at the end of the day. This is what we need to fight. More than fighting the Americans, fighting the Chinese. These guys are just doing a business deal. As far as they are concerned, they are making money, and they will not stop making money as long as Africa continues to want deals and side deals, individual goals, and then whatever. That's all it is. Selfishness. We think about self more than the collective.
Right. I agree.
What
I
do you
was
think,
saying,
Papa?
right. I was agreeing with you that even Chivayo is an individual. He went in, got a deal like any other young person looking for progress, and he got it. And I can't knock him off on that. However, people are not happy that he got it. People in the opposition or anyone else, they don't do tenders. They are afraid to do that because you get accused of being an insider working with ZANU PF. But if you look at EFF, they have not had problems with creating tenders and giving everybody an opportunity, creating millionaires in the opposition party, talking to say, let's do something to work together to make sure that everybody gets a piece of the pie. What we have situated in Zimbabwe is the Chamisa regime has made it very hard to make people participate in the economy of Zimbabwe, to allow people to be part of the tender process or anything that assists the people of Zimbabwe. They are okay with me donating hospital beds and everything like that. Those things we used to give them under tender, but they're okay if I'm donating them. But they're not okay if I can get a contract from the government so I can donate and make some money. They are always begging, asking, and they don't reward. And they think you should just take everything you have and give it to them. But they don't want to be accountable for anything, or at least do what is logical, which comes back to the fact that they are part of the ruling class, just a fake opposition, oppressing people, pretending to hype people up. That's why you have this situation in Zimbabwe that the opposition is non-existent and is collaborating with the ruling party. That's why we need a new one. And the ruling party itself is corrupt, not only being instigated by America, but they're doing this on their own. You don't see America in the $15 billion thing, but yet they are eating the Russian propaganda, the Chinese propaganda that America is terrible. They just keep saying that. They go in and demonstrate in front of the American embassy. There's this thought process that is also being propagated by people like Rutendo, the anti-sanctions movement. For people who are obviously leeches, corrupt, they shouldn't be punished because the people in Zimbabwe have been unable to punish them. They can't do anything. They are above the law. And America, the big brother, says, what do you guys want us to do? Give us the evidence. We'll act on it. That's not new. The Magnitsky law have been established because Russia was arresting people who exposed corruption. And they didn't have anyone to defend them. And here they are using the American dollar, and they are getting American products. And America was like, okay, let's find a way to equalize this. But they don't want that. Oh, no. That's colonialism. So we have to teach people and desensitize them from these thought processes that are so negative and programmed by Russia and China and very powerful white people who are sending these videos around for marketing purposes to establish a Russian Chinese brick hegemony against the destruction of the American democracy. That has been very good for the world. You know, science comes from America. All the science, all the churches that you see now, they were born here. You know, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. It was created in America. I went to Baptist school. It was created in America. I mean, a lot of religious freedoms. Why the Puritans came to America to seek religious freedom here, to seek the ability to be free. And that is what we now teach everyone around the world with honesty and integrity and truthfulness without pretense. But we are getting opposition. There's gonna be this opposition that is coming, and we agree that they can try, but we gotta keep fighting. And one last thing I want to just say is we don't have an opposition, and so we are all for grabs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. But I think at the end of the day, the tragedy with Zimbabwe, in my view, is that we have all fallen into this trap of blaming outsiders for our problems, finding scapegoats for our problems. Yes, of course, the Chinese have been looting in Zimbabwe. That there's no denying. But they're only taking advantage of the system in Zimbabwe, where the rulers are so incredibly corrupt. There's no doubt that ZANU-PF would rather have the Chinese looting the country blind than lose power. They do not want to be democratically accountable to the people. The opposition you were talking about there, Mafa, is, yes, it's non-existent for the simple reason that ZANU-PF has become so incredibly corrupt and powerful and rich. They're able to buy off the opposition. There is no denying, I think we've said it on this platform, that the opposition have been participating in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that they're flawed, but knowing fully well that if they participate, ZANU-PF will pay them. And they have been paying them generously. I think the other day, myself and Ben were talking about the bribes, the $40,000 bribe in November 2022 for housing for all the ministers and senators. Everybody knew that was a bribe. There was no way those MPs and senators were going to repay that loan in the few months left before the parliament was dissolved. And then we saw later on, a few months later, Mnangagwa paying $400,000 to all the judges just before the election started. That too was a bribe. But unfortunately, this is the reality in Zimbabwe. We have got a failed political system, and outsiders are only willing, those who are willing to take the risk, to come in and exploit it. We have made business very expensive in Zimbabwe, not only for outsiders, but for Zimbabweans themselves. It is really difficult to be a successful business person in Zimbabwe because of the economic situation there. You know, getting money from the bank, even if you have got money in your account, is so difficult. How could you possibly have a prosperous economy when you have to queue for hours on end to get your own money from the bank? These are some of the realities that we've got to face. I think at the end of the day, we have not really, in my view, addressed the problem, the underlying problem, that Africa is the most backward continent. We've got the poorest, and we've got some of all the negative things, civil wars, famine, you name it, all the problems, because we have failed to govern ourselves. And in my view, I think it's an issue that we really should seriously look into and see whether we could come up with a solution without having to always refer to the West did this, the East did that. They only take advantage of the fact that we have failed to govern ourselves. Ben, would you like to give your final remark?
Yes, so in closing, I would say, whether it be East or West, it all comes down to us as Africans. Unless we stamp out corruption, unless we stamp out selfishness and look at the collective, we will never get rid of us being beggars, us being at the bottom and being taken advantage of. It starts with us. And one other thing is, it also needs each individual to think for themselves. Unless we think for ourselves, then, and learn to question our leaders, whether be it, the ones in power or the opposition. And the worst part is the opposition is the future. So if we just blindly follow the opposition into the future, tomorrow they will be presidents, and they have been lying to us all along. Do you expect them to tell the truth in the future? No, I don't think so. So it is now us and our ability to see and to read in between the lines and to ask, but you said this, why did you not do that? Why, we need to have explanations to some things that are happening, right? For example, I mean, we have these deals that are happening and all that. Everybody is, they're so concerned who got the car from this guy and who got. Yet, at the end of the day, it is your money that you are actually asking why, who got the car. So, in other words, you paid somebody to get the car. So we need to start thinking for ourselves and see the bigger picture. It's not fun. We have to think. We have to think. We have to analyze before we just take whatever content we are told and we run with it. So unless Africa stamps out corruption, has an electorate that thinks for themselves, that ability to see 2 or 3 yards ahead, we will never get rid of this. And I'm telling you, it may be the East, it may be the West, it may be wherever, they will take advantage of Africa because we are unable to take care of ourselves. We are unable to take care of our people. And once our people are hungry, we are up for grabs to anybody to exploit. Period. That's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. My friend, we want to give you
I
a
agree
question.
with you that we need to educate our people. We need to be vigilant to hold our leaders accountable. We need to do whatever it takes to not kiss ass. I have not seen anyone criticize the opposition except Wilbert, because I do have to ask yourself why. People are afraid to be attacked. People are afraid to lose favors. People feel they have access to even Chamisa. Maybe they might get something when he gets to be something. He's reachable, and people just text him, and so you start to think maybe you are in the in. No, you are not. He's corrupt. He's a corrupt young man. He's been bought, and there's no way he can fight those people in Zimbabwe as much as he has been in that country. He cannot be the trusted person to handle this. He's working with them, as far as I'm concerned, and that is what I truly believe. And so to move our country forward, we have to be educating each other and look at the South African example here, what's happening there, and improve on that. But we definitely need a new movement for Zimbabwe, a new political frontier, and an ability to stand up against ZANU-PF, and do whatever it takes to make sure the people's voices are heard. We can't have people who abdicate in the middle, people who run away without even explaining. During that time, Mnangagwa was busy flying everywhere, going to Dubai, and Chamisa was hiding. We thought he was dead, only to come out and give us an 8-page letter on Twitter and then resign. It's unfair. With 2 million votes, he has no accountable anything to the people of Zimbabwe. He doesn't owe them anything. Imagine such a person, and people are waiting for him again, even after almost doing what he has done. It's almost like Trump say, I'll kill people and you bring me back in. And so, not to veer off the subject, because I can't help myself but talk about Chamisa and the opposition and its incompetence to bring the people of Zimbabwe to a fair vote, to the voices being realized that they have actually arrived. if they won, as they keep saying, we won, but they can't take the power. I don't know how they could without reforming it anyway, but yeah, say they won. Then why didn't you take it? So that's where we are. What are you going to do? You want to demonstrate? No, I don't want to demonstrate because it kills people. People will die. So how are you going to ever remove ZANU-PF if we give you another opportunity 2028? Nobody wants to talk about that because the answer is obvious, and back to you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I think this is a big issue. To me, and until we solve this problem of bad governance, until we can show the world that we can govern ourselves, we can make mistakes and correct them and move forward, we'll forever going round and round in circles. So, gentlemen, I don't know whether you can make it tomorrow, same time. But I really would like to invite you and the listeners to join us to explore this idea. Forget the outsiders, forget the East, forget the West, forget this new kid on the block, the Middle East, particularly Dubai, exploiting Zimbabwe. They're only taking advantage of the fact that we have got weak state institutions. We have corrupt leaders who can easily be bought. They've come to join in the looting because we are not looking after ourselves. But the question that has got to be is, how are we going to have a competent, accountable government? How can we achieve it? I think that is the challenge I would like you gentlemen to think about. And hopefully we can start addressing that specific issue, focus on it in future discussions. Thank you again, Ben, and thank you, Mafa, for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Wilbert. See you tomorrow.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having us.